It's often been said that most terrorists are not rocket scientists, but this bunch, boy, they're pretty stupid. Hi, this is Phil Gurski, President and CEO of Borealis Threat and Risk Consulting in Russell, Ontario, Canada, and you're listening to Quick Hits. A few months ago, I did a couple of videos and podcasts in which I talked about the top 10 worst terrorist group names. I looked at both the far right and jihadis. And it turned out this was a pretty popular podcast that I did, introducing a little bit of humor into the world of terrorism. Backed by popular demand, it's another top 10. Except this time, it's the top 10 stupidest or dumbest terrorists of all time. I've scanned my experiences to look at acts in which people were not just incompetent, but hilariously so. So for your benefit, this is my list of the top 10 stupidest terrorists of all time. Number 10 is an unnamed man who, in December of 2010, in Stockholm in Sweden, tried to carry out a vehicular bombing in which he killed no one but himself. He was near a popular shopping district during the Christmas shopping season, and he tried to carry out a mass attack, and he just blew himself up. Oh well, one less terrorist to worry about. Number 9, a fictitious bunch of terrorists. And this is the film that dates back a couple of years now, 2010 also. It's the film Four Lions, which is a hilarious film about, to quote IMDb, the misadventures of a group of British Islamic fundamentalists intent on sacrificing themselves for Allah. If you haven't seen this film, you really got to watch it. It's really quite funny. And the only victim, I guess you could say, or target of the terrorist group is a crow. They try to put a suicide vest on a crow, and the crow blows up. So all in all, a very, very funny movie about some pretty well useless terrorists. Number 8 is not a jihadi. It is an American citizen called Jake Angeli. He's from Phoenix, and he was the guy on January the 6th of 2021, the infamous attack on the U.S. Capitol that was egged on by Donald Trump's claim that the election had been stolen. We all remember that day. Jake Angeli was the idiot with the fur hat with the buffalo horns. He had some kind of a spear or a sword, and I think he had his chest paint of the U.S. flag. And he was pretty obvious in the attack. He was front and center right from the get-go. And lo and behold, he got arrested, and he was charged with breaking an entry, violent entry, and disorderly content. What a moron. Number 7 is an interesting case that has arisen again lately. This is a Canadian called Shehrazad Chowdhury. Now, he was famous in that a couple years ago, back in 2016, there was a series of articles in the New York Times by a veteran terrorism reporter called Rukmini Callimachi. I've talked to Rukmini on several occasions, and he claimed that in 2016, he had gone to Syria and joined ISIS. And there was this amazing series of reporting called The Caliphate. It was a 10-part podcast series in the New York Times by Rukmini and Chowdhury. And turns out it was all bullshit. The guy never left Toronto. He lied about having joined ISIS. Interestingly, he was then charged with hoax, a terrorism hoax by the RCMP. That charge has since been dropped. I'm going to get back to that in another podcast, another Quick Hits podcast. But essentially, Mr. Chowdhury rates as number 7 because he was a terrorist in that he claimed to be, but, this guy couldn't spell ISIS if you gave him the first 4 letters. So he's a truly, truly stupid terrorist. Number 6. Just after 9/11, in December of 2001, a man called Richard Reed was on a flight from Paris to Miami when he tried to detonate a bomb in his shoe. He is now called the shoe bomber. It failed miserably. Nothing happened to the plane, and he was in fact arrested and is probably serving a very long jail sentence somewhere. I find this interesting because the shoe bomber was lampooned in the Get Smart film. One was Steve Carell. And if you remember that film, he's trying to get gum off his shoe with a matchstick, and someone thinks he's trying to set his shoe on fire. So here is an example of art imitating life, making fun of the shoe bomber from back in 2001. Number 5 is a man called Karam Sher. Now, Karam Sher was arrested back in 2010 in conjunction with Operation Samosa, which was a Canadian RCMP investigation into a cell that wanted to attack a repatriation ceremony at the Trenton Air Base where soldiers are coming back from Afghanistan. Karam Sher was part of a trio that were arrested. Actually, 4 of them were arrested. All 4 were charged. Only 2 were found guilty. Karam Sher was actually acquitted in 2014. The funny part of Karam Sher is that he was a failed contestant on Canadian Idol, which of course is the Canadian version of American Idol. And he was trying to do Avril Lavigne's Complicated, not very well, while doing a kind of a Michael Jackson moonwalk, if you remember from those days. Anyhow, Karam Sher lost his job, lost his family, lost his house, and has become a loser. And even though he was acquitted, he still ranks as the number 5 dumbest terrorist of all time. Number 4. This is an interesting case that dates back to 2007. On June 30th of that year, there was an attack at the Glasgow airport when 2 guys, an Iraqi named Bilal Abdullah, who was a doctor, and an Indian named Kafil Ahmed, who was an engineer from India. They lived in Saudi Arabia. They tried to attack the Glasgow airport by ramming an SUV, actually a Jeep Cherokee, into the main terminal. Unfortunately, they hit a concrete post, and the bomb exploded outside the terminal, and one of them was very, very badly burned. So they failed miserably in their terrorist attack. And one of the funnier parts about this one is that there was some of the passengers, people milling about, essentially started to kick the shit out of these 2 terrorists. And there's a guy called Alex McElveen, and he told a BBC documentary back in 2008, he said, quote, "I was pure daft because I gave him a kick in the crotch." Now, I can't do a Scottish accent very well, but he went on to say, "He didn't flinch. He didn't move nor nothing. I gave him a good kick as well." And in fact, McElveen, this is the passenger, tore a tendon in his foot when he kicked Ahmed in the nuts. So these guys rank as not very good terrorists as well. Number 3. Now, this is an interesting case also from Canada, and it dates back to 2017 on June the 3rd, when an Iraqi Canadian named Rehab Dugmash went into a Canadian Tire. And for those who aren't familiar with Canadian Tire, it's like a Home Depot. It's a hardware store. It's been around for donkey's years in Canada. And she went into the Canadian Tire with a bow and a butcher's knife, and she tried to attack the staff. Unfortunately, she didn't have any arrows for the bow. She tried to get some arrows, and the clerk refused to give them to her. And then she lunged at a staff with a knife and a golf club. Not very Canadian. Had she been a true Canadian, she would have used a hockey stick, but clearly. Anyhow, she was wrestled to the ground, she was arrested, she was found guilty of an act of terrorism and sentenced to 7 years in jail in 2019. She came up for parole shortly afterwards, and here's what she told the parole officer: "If you release me from jail, I will do another terrorist attack." Well, I'm guessing that if you're trying to get the Crown to grant you parole, you don't say that to a parole officer. Number 2 is actually a couple, and again, back to Canada. This is John Nuttall and Amanda Carodi, who on Canada Day back in 2013 tried to explode pressure cooker bombs on the grounds of the BC legislature in Victoria to coincide with Canada Day celebrations. They were found guilty in 2015 by a jury of conspiracy to commit terrorism. The judge threw the charges out based on entrapment, one of the worst decisions in Canadian legal history, according to me. But why they rank as a stupid bunch of terrorists is that while they were planning their attack, they were sharing their information with an RCMP agent. In other words, the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which was investigating these losers, knew everything exactly as it was happening because these 2 shared all their plans with them. Lesson to terrorists: if you're going to plan an act of terrorism, don't confess your plans to a police agent. Never a really good idea. And so we come to number 1. And there's no question in my mind that the single stupidest terrorist of all time is a man called Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib. He's a Nigerian, and on Christmas Day in 2009, He was on board a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit, and as the plane was landing, so coming across southwestern Ontario, near where I grew up, he tried to detonate a bomb on the plane. And the bomb was located in, shall we say, a sensitive part of the body. Now, I'm a male member of the species, and I know that you try to protect certain areas between your legs because getting injured there is generally a bad thing. I'm a goalie in ice hockey, and I've got the odd puck to the nuts, and I can tell you it doesn't feel very good. Abdulmutallab had the bomb in his underwear, hence he's called the underwear bomber. The bomb failed to detonate, although he got badly burned, again, in a very not to be badly burned place of the body as far as most men are concerned, and is now spending the rest of his life in jail. So for his incredibly stupid plan to plant a bomb near his gonads, I give Abdulmutallab the rank of number 1 dumbest terrorist of all time. So that's my list of the top 10 dumb terrorists. What do you think? You probably have other cases. I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on email, borealisrisk@gmail.com, or on Twitter @borealisafe. You can also reach me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. If you like this content or want to suggest more top 10 lists, get a hold of me. You can go to borealisthreatandrisk.com, subscribe for more information, give me your ideas. Also, you can buy my latest book, The Peaceable Kingdom, History of Terrorism in Canada from Confederation to the Present, available on my website. Love to hear your feedback. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, stay safe.